Hi. Um, I don't know where George is right now. Really, you're not even gonna appear on camera for this one? And I'm Ken. So in this episode, we're doing arched font art. I think it kind of has a kind of athletic shirt collegiate feel to it. I think it comes out really cool. And it's a little fidgety, but it's not that complicated. Yep, we do have a reference sheet for this one also. So do show more and read our description, and you'll get a link to go to our website to get that as a handout. Now we're going to make some font art in an arched style. I've already entered some text here. This works really well with a chunkier font and generally all caps, just because then the line height of your characters is very similar. Because with the arch, you're generally trying to have a line that's very similar on one side and then the arch on another. So with the text placed, I need to place a circle, so I come over to the toolbar and click on the ellipse tool. You want to drag out a circle, and you want to go wider than your phrase. See how at the sides it's very arched? If you were trying to bring your text down there, it's just going to look odd and distorted. So this way we have an arch that we're going to add to our text, but it's not a very sharp one, so our letters are not going to be distorted significantly. With the arch set, you just want to drag this up so it's just touching the bottom of your phrase. A tip to center these two items perfectly to each other is to use the Align tool in Inkscape. First, you want to come up to Edit and select all. And now go to the Object menu and choose Align and Distribute. On the Align and Distribute panel, make sure you're relative to selection, and then do Center on Vertical Axis. That's all we want to do in this case. And you can close the panel when you're done with it. Now these are lined up perfectly to each other, so we'll ensure that we have a very similar arch both to the left and the right while we work. Now we need to take our phrase and take it from text to objects that we can shape. Using the pointer tool, I'm clicking on my text to select it, and going to Path, Object to Path, and then Object, Ungroup. Now these are individual objects that we can work with. You're going to come over to the sidebar and select the Rectangle and Square tool, and you want to draw a rectangle that outlines your first letter. What I find helpful is to set the border to none, so holding down Shift, I click on the red X on the color bar at the bottom to say none, and then choose a color that's not really in my design, so I'm going to use this bright fuchsia, and just click on that without holding any keys, and that sets the box. What I've also done here from my previous work is at the bottom, the opacity of my square is set to 80%, so I can see through the square and see the letter beneath it. You can adjust this by typing in a number, and like I said, for me, 80% worked well, and just press return on the keyboard. You can also use the arrows to adjust it if you want to see what works better for you. While we have the square selected still, the last thing we need to do is convert this from an object to a path. We need to be able to manipulate the square individually for each node, and right now this is just a square object. So with the square selected, go to Path, Object to Path. Using the Node tool, I can now manipulate the individual nodes that make up this shape. And that's what we need to do this arch. Click on the first node on the bottom and drag it down to meet the edge of the circle. If you like, don't forget you can use the plus and minus keys to zoom in if that would be helpful to see your work. And a little trick when you're dragging these nodes down, I'm going to do the other side. You'll see as I move the node around, the square changes shape, but there's still this dotted line for the selection of the entire square object. That can be used as a guide, so when you're dragging things down you can know, oops, that's not really going to be straight. If I follow that dotted line and just try to keep it lined up, you'll find that your work comes out looking pretty good. And this one, now that I've zoomed in, isn't quite on the circle, so I just corrected that a little. You'll also want to make sure that you're being consistent at the top. Whoops. You really want to make sure that you're being consistent at the top as far as where the square touches your letters. And now that I've zoomed in, I was actually way over more towards the I, so I'm just being a little fidgety and making sure each letter is going to have its own space between. So here you can see I'm tight to the top of the W, and I've got my lines going down to meet the side of the circle. Now I'm switching over to the pointer tool, and I'm clicking and dragging out a lasso, and I want to make sure that my lasso covers my entire square and the letter that's beneath it. You can see I've overlapped onto the I and part of the circle, but as long as you're not lassoing the entire object, it won't be selected. Now if I let go, it's only selected the W and the square. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the dotted line around the letter to let me know that that's selected also. Now for the magic. We're going to go up to the Extensions menu, Modify Path, and choose Envelope. What this does is treat our square as an envelope, and it pushes the letter to fit that envelope. So here's a dialog letting me know that the envelope is working. It's a script that runs. On the Mac, I see an actual Inkscape icon pop up and down in my dock. But the first time you run it, it does take a moment because it's got to load the script and run it. After we do each subsequent letter, it'll happen much quicker. But now you can see that the W has stretched to fit the envelope we created. Now I can take our square and move it over to the next letter. I like to line it up on the top first, and then we can switch to the Node tool on the toolbar and drag things over to work with our next letter. Again, we want to make sure that the bottoms are straight, so I'm using that dotted line, and that the point is on the edge of the circle. And before we distort that one, Just wanted to say there's our W, and now you can see that it comes down to meet the edge of the circle, so we're starting to bring that arch into our text. Now I can switch to the pointer tool, drag to make sure that I'm selecting both the square shape and my letter, and doing extensions, modify path, and envelope. And there we go. Now it's just a matter of repeating those steps. Dragging your square over, switching to the node tool, and then adjusting it to accommodate your letter. And use those dotted lines for the larger shape to help you block things out while you're dragging. So the square is lined up to my letter and the circle. Pointer tool, drag to select the two items, extensions, modify, envelope. Now I'm just going to fast forward through the rest of the letters. There we go. I have my arch text. I can drag my circle out of the way. This isn't like putting text on a path. They're not connected. And I think that came out looking pretty cool. It's kind of sporty. For me, that always kind of looks collegiate, like those athletic shirts. You can also do this from the bottom. I kept the circle because this way I can make sure that my next phrase has kind of the same arch. I don't have to bring it up to line up with this. I can just leave it there and then add a new phrase. So again, I just need to make sure it's lined up at the top, and I can use the align to center those to each other. So with both selected, in this case, instead of doing select all, I use the pointer tool and held down shift to click on the two items to select them as a group. And now, object, align and distribute, still relative to selection, and center on vertical axis. And I can close this. Now I need to select my text, path, object to path, and then object, ungroup. And I can bring over my square so I'm ready. And now I just zoom in so I can work on these letters. And one thing I forgot to mention, I was dragging the nodes before. One thing that's easy for the sides is while you have it selected, just use your straight resized arrows to drag that over. Makes it much easier. Now I can switch to the node tool and adjust these edges. And again, I'm just making sure that it matches up to the curve of my circle. Then drag to select the two items, extensions, modify path, envelope. You'll notice nothing happened that time, and that's because the order of the items is important. Because I added this text after I did my square that I was working with before, it's actually behind my text. what I need to do is bring it to the front so it's the priority. That way it knows that I want to use the envelope to the square. I click on the square to select it and go to Object, Raise to Top. Now you can see, because of my opacity, that the square is over the letter. Now, using the pointer tool again, I can select Extensions, Modify Path, and Envelope. And there we go. Now it's adjusting the top side to the arch of the circle. And I can drag my square over and repeat this for the rest of the letters. I'm done at this point, and I won't need the square again, so I'm going to click on it once to select it, and hit delete on the keyboard. Zooming back out, I'm also done with the circle, so again, I can click on it once to select it, and just hit delete on the keyboard. I want to finish these off as two separate font art objects. I can still do this in the same document, but I need to group them individually. Using the pointer tool, I'm just going to lasso my first word, and go to Path, Union, and then repeat the same. Using the pointer tool, lasso my second word, Path, Union. I can save these as an SVG now, so you should be familiar with going to the File menu, Save, and saving them as a plain SVG to bring into Cricut Design Space or your cutting software. These are going to be cut as individual letters, but they're going to be grouped in the software as a single word. Arch text is pretty cool, but you can take it further using some of the techniques we've already learned, like the layered mats. I think that really takes that collegiate athletic look up another notch. To do that though, I want these to be one object, so I'm going to undo a couple steps. So there I've went back until my two union steps were no longer in the undo menu. And I want this to be one art piece now. But I want the roar to be a little closer, so I'm going to use the pointer tool, drag to select, and now I'm just clicking and holding to drag these up. And I'm just lining up those four letters. And I'm going to center this in the page. Just lassoing things again and bringing it down. And now that everything's arranged how I want it, I'm going to do Path, Union, to make this a single path. And now I can just use the techniques that we already covered with the layered mats. With my font art selected, I go to Path, Linked Offset, and I want this one to be white, but I need to see it to do it, so I'm making it fuchsia for now. And then going Object, lower to bottom, and dragging it out. For this layer, I just want kind of a slim outline, so that's good. I can now go to Path, Object to Path, to finalize that. And I want one more layer, so I'm going to repeat my steps while it's still selected. Path, Linked Offset, and this one I'm going to make blue. And now Object, lower to bottom, and this one I want to fill up more, so I'm just dragging it out to be a little thicker. I think that's good. Now I can finish it with Path, Object to Path. And these aren't the colors I wanted to finalize with, so I want my text to be orange. And my fuchsia layer, just need to click over a little bit. There we go. to be white. That, to me, screams that athletic school colors look. I'm going to click on my text layer and do Object, lower to bottom. Click on my white layer and do Object, lower to bottom. And then selecting my blue layer, I switch to the Node tool and I can start cleaning up these holes. And I thought I saw it over here. If you zoom in, there's a cluster close to the edge there. Now, I still have all these extra nodes. I'm going to use the Path menu and simplify. Now there's far fewer nodes to worry about. And I might do it once more just to see the effect. Maybe even once more. I think that smoothed things out. I'm just going to send this to the back. And click off to see how it looks. I think that looks pretty good. I do want to smooth out the top a little. I'm going to switch to the Node tool and click on the blue again. And I really want it to be kind of smooth across the top from here to here. So all I'm going to do while it's selected is lasso those nodes in between and hit delete. And it's still trying to curve. I could grab these handles. It's a little easier to see here off the blue, but there's one here also. I could drag these, but I'm just going to remove the handles to have a straight line between the two nodes. Holding down the Control key, I click on the handle, and I'm going to repeat it with the other one. Holding down the Control key, click on the handle. Now it's a straight line between the two, and it's just at a little bit of an angle, and I want it to be even. I think I'm going to bring down this side. So clicking on the node, I just bring it down. And again, that dotted line for the bounding box gave me a little reference to let me know that that was an angle and to help me straighten things out. I think I'm going to repeat the same thing on the bottom. So click and drag to get these two intervening ones and delete. And then Control click on the handle, Control click. I think that looks much better, but it's probably hard to see on the video. I noticed there's a little speck in the A. I'm going to zoom in and switch to the Node tool. And clicking on the white, I can see that little speck where my linked offset didn't quite merge together to make a single part here. And deleting that, and then 5 to zoom back out. And I think that came out looking really good. And here's our art in Design Space, ready to cut. Our full blue layer, the orange text, and then that white shadow. Like a lot of the techniques in this series, arch text looks good on its own, but you can also mix techniques for even cooler effects. I think it's kind of fun too. I enjoyed playing around with that. That wraps up our Font Art in Inkscape series. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments on the video. We might make a follow-up video with any little tips or answering questions. So don't forget to give our videos a thumbs up. And like we said, leave your questions and comments. And subscribe using our little icon to make sure you don't miss out on our future videos. We have lots of great ideas and projects coming up. Bye. I don't know what you're saying.
I would say...
It's not really showing up.
So you ready?
Oh my